Welcome to the Media Roundtable, where we call it Media Roundtable, but really what we end up talking about like 95% of the time is podcasting. And we do this in service of the marketers who help keep the ship afloat, who really are the wind beneath our wings in this industry, no matter what side of it you're on. This is a very pro-advertising business, and we're very much talking about the business here. I am your host, Dan Granger. I'm the CEO of Oxford Road. I have a very special friend with me today, friend of the show, friend of the agency, Brendan Monahan. You know Brendan because he built the biggest ad tech that lives inside the biggest walled garden in audio. He is the co-founder, former CEO of Megaphone, which you may have heard sold to Spotify years ago for $235 million. Do you like hearing that in your bio, Brendan? Is that awkward to like have everybody say that?
No,
as part of your identity.
It's okay. And actually, with the valuations being thrown around AI, it just looks smaller and smaller every day.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Lunch money now.
Right.
Okay. So then while we're still talking about you here, he led Spotify's SaaS business for a while, and then he walked away and re-emerged with a whole new bag of tricks at Libsyn, which is the oldest independent podcasting platform in the world. And they've just been such great partners to all of the crazy, wacky ideas we have at Oxford Road, our events, the chief audio officer, the CAO summit, and so many things we're doing at South by Southwest. And Libsyn's really been a partner to us in bringing a lot of these things together, because I think we all share a common purpose that, yes, we make our livings in this business, but we also are trying to make it more durable and really kind of shape the ecosystem that's still coming together. And we're going to talk about a lot of that today. So Brendan, welcome. Thank you for being back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always great to talk to you, Dan.
And since apparently podcasts are now visual media, and it's no longer really an audio product anymore, is it? We are, because you're obviously watching that. We are twinsies today, both wearing our black shirts, just representing different sides of this great country.
That's right.
So thank you for following the dress code. Okay, let's talk Libsyn. I think we were talking about I think the last time you were on, we were talking about what's a podcast and trying to come up with the definition of all that, which is still a bit of an open question, although we have our views. But Libsyn, a lot has changed since you've been in the saddle here, and you've been locking up a lot of talent. The business is growing, and you've got a lot going on. So can you just give us a little glimpse or a little recap of what's the update at Libsyn since you've really been back in the saddle here?
Yeah. I mean, as you know, Libsyn's been around for a long time, and it's just a wonderful brand that's been established in this industry. I was brought in October of 2024, so it's been about a year and a half now. And what I was brought into was a business that for a long time was largely just a hosting business. I say just because that in of itself is complicated. But then in the past 5 years has added a significant monetization and ad team, which interacts with your folks quite a bit. And so I was fortunate to inherit, two teams that have worked in their respective spaces very long. Like any situation, when you come into, my job as CEO is to evaluate a number of things, including the business itself, where the growth opportunities lie, the people we have in place, and the prospects we have across the board. For me, what I'd say in terms of putting some meat on the bones for your question is I inherited a really strong sales organization that was built. Rick Sela and others on his team have done a great job with that organization. I've been spending more time on the marketing, technology, product sides of the business to really kind of focus there and try and reinvigorate a company that has been doing great things historically, but maybe in the past few years has lost its way a little bit in terms of innovation and development and leading an industry that it led for so long. And so, yeah, that's how I'd answer that question. I'm spending a lot of time thinking about a topic I know we're going to get into, video, and how do we provide the best technology, monetization, data, and analytics, and other tools for our creators in space.
Yeah, and I do want to get into that product and tech piece with you.
Sure.
Certainly, this is a historic time to be there. But let's jump to the other side of the house for a second, which is really just the kind of old school talent business side of
Yeah.
it, right? It's so funny. You get to be on one hand technologist, and on the other hand,
Yeah.
you're keeping the talent fed and happy, right? And so you've had some wins, some pickups for the roster. Can you talk about what that has looked like? I think probably, gosh, what you came back in what, 24?
Yep.
Okay. So who are some of the additions?
Well, I mean, I think for us, the business has evolved. I mean, the thing that we have is, we have existing relationships with folks like Nick Vile, with Dan Harris. We work with some great partners in the faith space. Girls Gone Bible has been a great addition. But what's funny is too, some of our oldest partners we just had out to our company summit, and it's a really unique mix of creators. But like you say, I think the thing for Libsyn that I didn't have in my past was this world in which we're representing these large shows and helping them monetize from a host-read perspective. When I was at Megaphone, we led the launch of what's now known as Span, creating that audience targeting capabilities. But now we're working, at Libsyn across all three areas of the spectrum, particularly on the host-read side. So folks like ABC, we're bringing direct sales to and trying to represent them in market. And so it's a broad mix of anywhere from individuals to well-known media companies. But for us, it's how do we think about, as you say, bring revenue to them and helping them fuel their dreams on the business side. So it is new for me because we did it at one point at Megaphone in the early days and then got away from it. So yeah, it's a different set of relationships to manage, a different set of folks to interact with on the agents side that represent them. But we've got a really good team led by Stephen Pearlstein who focuses on that for us, and it's been fun.
Did I see you did a deal with Quentin Tarantino?
You did, yeah.
Is he going to do live reads? Well, I was going to tell you, I have my Quentin Tarantino podcast story is that, this agency would not exist if it wasn't for me, like going up to famous people when I would see them places and like using my famous person pickup line so that they'd want to talk to me as something other than a fan, which is like, I'd be like, so do you have a podcast? Like, that's my big move. And like, honestly, the agency kind of was a byproduct of a lot of those types of conversations. And I was at an airport probably more than 10, maybe 15 years ago, coming back from like Cancun, and Quentin Tarantino is out in the middle of the public moving through the airport, and I'm in the security line with him, and I'm like, Quentin, when are you doing a podcast? And he's like, huh? Like, I'm not. Like, he wanted nothing to do with it. Sometimes ideas just, they take time, and it sounds like you got really good timing on this one.
Yeah, it sounds like it, but we have you to thank for planting the seed in Cancun at one point.
Without that exchange, you would not have this deal.
Wouldn't have happened.
Assuredly. So, okay. So you're picking, that's a cool pickup.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to flag?
No, I mean, I think we work with a number of creators that we're really proud of, and nothing in particular I want to call out and name right now.
And you did make a little noise about some of the lifetime creator payouts and some of the growth around that. Can you share any of that news?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is the announcements we've talked about in terms of payouts, $100 million of payouts to creators the past several years. And I think for us, that's just our continued commitment to creators, both large and small. I think that's one distinction for us is, we obviously work with some of the big names like you've talked about, but also a lot of smaller creators that are open to monetization, and we've since opened that up. And when I got here, there was a limitation on number of downloads for folks to receive monetization. We've gotten rid of that limit. So from the smallest shows to the biggest, we're providing the opportunity for shows to create dollars and monetize what they're trying to achieve, whether it's small or big. The thing for us is the growth we've seen over the past few years. I'll talk about 40% on the advertising side, year over year growth. We're modeling something north of 30 this year again. And that's just a testament to, strong sales team, but really strong shows that creators are building and advertisers want to be a part of. And, of course, we're working with folks like Oxford Road and really excited about the clients you bring to the table and how we help them reach their audiences as well.
Well, and the work you've done, I think, has been felt by our clients, just in that we've been able to scale further as you've made some of those improvements. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
And you've got the long tail, right? Like, so how many different podcasts are hosted by?
Yeah, we work with over 60,000 shows. So it's interesting because in my past, we worked with larger but a smaller number of them. Here, it's a completely different mix of 60,000 shows that require a different level of billing support, of customer experience or customer support, and it's a different type of company. But I think it creates some compelling economics for us in terms of our business, and then of course how we support creators, both large and small. So I like that a lot. For me, the story of folks, and I was alluding to them earlier, folks like Wine and Crime. It's a small pair of ladies who started their show with us from nothing, and now they're touring live venues, have a strong membership base, and are generating really meaningful revenue. And they started off just two of them talking wine and crime in the news. And those are fun success stories too, to watch those independents become, success stories.
Well, and just to recap before we kind of jump into the state of the industry today, like Libsyn's brand, can you just recap for folks that don't remember?
Yeah.
What is the Libsyn story as you've been kind of grabbing the baton and taking it new places?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, Libsyn started in 2004. It's the oldest technology platform in the space. I break podcasting up in kind of two cycles. One, the early days of 2004 to 2014 and 15. And then you have that kind of serial and other breakout where Megaphone and others launched. And I, of course, came into that second wave. But working at Slate and the Washington Post, Libsyn was a partner of ours and had been strong in the technology world long before others were created. The thing that's evolved is this addition of monetization and ad sales teams to the business about 5 years ago. So the company took on a number of acquisitions, some good, some not so good. The good ones, AdvertiseCast, PAR, led to us helping build a really strong sales team and is the backbone of our monetization resources today. So that's how the business has changed. And now we provide that full suite of solutions for people, from publishing and distribution to monetization, and then on to metrics and analytics. And it's bringing those two things together. And when I joined, I think I've seen those two groups working really well together, but there's always room for improvement. And those folks have gotten even closer in the past couple of years. And that's fun to see when you can have salespeople bring ideas to technology and vice versa. That's how that business is evolving and what we're trying to bring to customers and market.
And as you think back over the history of the industry since you've been in it, which is, it seems like you really started right around the time that monetization started at all, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen an evolution in how much of the business is what we might define as independent versus corporate? And how do you think the pie has shifted since you came in?
Can you put a little more meat on the bones of independent versus corporate?
Yeah, well, and because we've been doing this awards show, prep, right? Like, we've been trying to answer that question, and it's maybe harder to answer than even what's a podcast, right? And I think our answer to the riddle is you are independent if you are if you are not editorially governed by a third party.
Yeah.
You are independent if you are not exclusive to one distribution platform, and you are, and for our, at least for the definitions of our awards, I don't think we're trying to define what independent means holistically, but just in terms of what made you eligible for our awards,
Yeah.
you had to not have a minimum guarantee that we knew about. And that's a funky one, which I think it cuts both ways, right? Because like, is Joe Rogan independent? He's independent creatively, but is he independent
Right.
anymore? And do you want to honor the people that aren't worried about where their next meal is coming from, the same way that the people that are living hand to mouth on this and like this
Yeah.
is everything? And then I guess the last criteria that I remember that we added was like, if it's a celebrity vehicle, if you're a celebrity already and this is not your primary focus and this is just something you kind of do on the side, we excluded that. It doesn't mean, who's to say what's independent, right? But
Yeah.
I think when you think of Libsyn, you think independent, right?
Right.
And so, I think maybe it's in the eye of the beholder. So, and maybe that's actually a better question is so hearing how we're thinking about it, how do you think about it? Because there probably really isn't a technical answer anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because Libsyn has such a long history that if someone's been in podcasting for any period of time, say longer than 10 years, they were probably hosted at Libsyn in the early days. I mean, we were one of the only, if not the only game in town. And so I think that's what's interesting about the space is Libsyn was that platform that serviced, what I'd call sometimes two guys in a basement talking college football independent to the Joe Rogans of the world. It's just, as well as when I was at Slate, we were hosted on Libsyn. And so a lot of that, the coverage they provided was across the board. And so for us, we have been more independent lately in terms of, when I think about the market, I think about it in kind of three segments. I think about enterprise, I think about that mid tail, and I think about a long tail. And what's interesting about our space is, yes, you have people that have established celebrity elsewhere and kind of come in. But before we were Megaphone, we were called Panoply. And we launched Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell is an amazing voice in the book and literary community, had no podcast whatsoever, and started Revisionist History with us at Panoply before we became Megaphone. He was a small voice that we helped monetize and provide technology and resources for, and now Pushkin is its own media entity. So it's interesting how the space evolves. And I think for us, there's two ways to look at independent. There's the independent creators and how those folks are growing and becoming, in some cases, media entities themselves. And then there's the independent platforms that are either like us that have no corporate ownership, or you have a lot of players, Megaphone, Art19, others that are owned at the corporate level.
Sorry. I want to make sure I understand that. Yeah, I'm not tracking with this, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
You're saying that you have no ownership over the shows that you host.
Correct.
Whereas you're saying there are some hosts who take a piece?
No, I think what I did there, Dan, sorry about that, is I conflated, there's independent creators and then there's independent platforms. And I started to blur those two lines.
Yeah. Okay,
but if we keep it at the creator level, I just look at it in the terms of the size and maybe their corporate ownership. I look at someone like an ESPN, obviously that's an enterprise player.
Right,
but then you get some people that are maybe new to the space. And Nick Vile's a good example. Nick is a celebrity that we work with, started a podcast, grew his audience significantly. Now he's appearing on Netflix, on other shows, and has a wide following. But at one point, you could argue he's all, to your Joe Rogan point, all along has been independent, but has kind of grown up with something that started as something really small. So I think, as you can tell, I have a hard time defining it myself.
You're in good company. Yeah. No, I mean, this is it's been a hell of a thing to try to pick awards around, because,
I bet.
but I think what I the way I think about, I mean, we got into a lot of this a year ago when we were just trying to define what is a podcast, right? And I think for me, I can be, Ira Glass came on and accused me of being a romantic, which I thought was interesting because I'm in advertising, right? But he's probably not wrong in that I really think about that kind of rock and that punk rock pirate radio
Yeah.
aspect of this whole thing, where it's the anti-terrestrial radio. It is
Yeah.
the anti corporate governance and all of that, right? But as we've been doing this,
Mm.
like, you become that, right? Like, everybody becomes a version of that. I mean, we went to private equity. Like, so am I independent? I don't even know.
Right. Right.
Like, I am and I'm not. It's like a lot of us, I think, are hybrid to some extent.
Yeah.
And I think there's a need. I believe there's a need to spotlight those that are still not governed by a
Yeah.
larger corporation. And I want to keep a spotlight on that. And I think that's why it's so important that we do these awards. And
Mhm.
I'm grateful that you're our partner and
Yeah.
have made these awards possible, because I think that's like the spirit of the industry. That's what makes it interesting, and not just, another studio run, filtered, controlled, product. But, you know, then if it's successful, is it disqualified for being honored from that? And that's sort of
Right. Yeah.
that's heaven forbid you take the check and you want to de-risk it a little bit. Like, so anyway, it is in the eye of the beholder, clearly, and I don't think there is a right answer. But I I guess if you were to think about it, like, publicly traded companies that have editorial influence,
Yeah.
and if you think about the consumption, if it started the guys talking about sports in the basement, or the geeks and gamers, or whatever it was that you think about,
Yeah.
having built this place, the share has obviously shifted of consumption to now it's a lot more manufactured. There's a lot more celebrity and
Yeah.
corporations behind it. And I don't know that any of us really know what the split is on that, but I will tell you this: the way we've been defining it, the independents actually work a lot better for the brands.
Mm.
And we're putting out our Orbit report. We kind of timed this one to be all about independence,
Yeah.
around what we're doing, and with South by and all that. And it's just like, 80% of our top performers are independents,
Yeah.
if you can believe that, right? And so there's something to it. There's something about it, but where you draw those lines is a mess.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that community, and we may touch on this later, but I think there's also a level of, I mean, you hear it, but we certainly see it all the time when we're able to bring a really cool or well-known or even not well-known advertiser to a show and say, hey, they're excited to be a part of your brand. That is both flattering, of course, financially beneficial, but also, I mean, I view them as, in some ways, thousands of small businesses. They're just at different stages, right? Some are really well established, and some are working their way to get there. But, that gets to our mindset at Libsyn about how do we think about our customers. And that's really a term we use a lot within the walls of our business, is how are we servicing the customer, and, regardless of what stage they're at.
It's so interesting. And, I think if you're going to do a podcast, there's probably a dream in there somewhere, right? Yeah. And, I think about, like, we've worked with LegalZoom on and off over decades now, since before the agency. And, so much of their business is helping entrepreneurs form a corporation. And it's about launching your dream. Well, there's nothing more like launching your dream than a podcast. Like, I think it is like the most American thing that you can do, right? It's the town square, and the hope of being able to be paid for that. And it's become democratized in a way that really anybody can do it. And so that's a really fascinating way to think about what you're able to do for the long tail, is to help people power that dream and give them an opportunity to be part of this, meritocracy, so long as it is one. And I think that's also why spotlighting the independent is important, because if that gets washed out, if there are no champions, if
Right.
nobody's providing the infrastructure and nobody's providing the advertising and the coverage and the acknowledgement, then it all does become corporate.
Yeah.
And then it kind of starts to lose some of its soul a little bit. So
Yeah, and that's I think what's exciting about the space we're in too is how media is evolving, right? Like if you wanted to go make a major motion picture, there are, sure you can do small film and documentary film, what have you. But what's interesting about this space is that it's started out so small, and the industry is evolving to the point where the limits are being expanded, right?
mm-hmm.
That if you were an Ashley Flowers, who I know you know well, if she started out independently and now is having huge success, and now finds herself being aired on CTV with fast channels, and the concept of being on television, from independent roots is pretty crazy.
Pretty
And then you start
crazy.
to think about, obviously YouTube is its own beast, but you start to think about Spotify, and then you start to think about Netflix, and that you have shows that, really were just suited for someone's ears at one point, now being televised in some cases, certainly across the country, in some cases around the world from a video perspective. It's pretty mind-boggling, and that's what I love about this space, is that just when you think the like limits are being defined, it's like, nope, we got a long more way to run.
Tell me if you've ever heard of any of these companies: Shopify, DraftKings, Oracle, Warby Parker, Mint Mobile, Quince. I am proud to say that half of the top 10 advertisers in podcasting choose to work with Oxford Road. We are now the world's largest podcast advertising agency, and we do so much more than that. YouTube, radio, streaming. We are on 6 continents working internationally. Reach out to us. We'll tell you about Woven, which is probably the world's largest database of show information that's relevant for brands. Orbit, which is $1.6 billion of aggregated performance data used to de-risk every single campaign. Audiolytics, where we can actually measure ad copy and optimize it to maximize performance. We got a lot going on over here. That's why you can read about us in the Wall Street Journal or the Hollywood Reporter or USA Today or Business Insider. But whatever you need, we try to bring thought leadership that matters to you. Sign up for our newsletter that is called The Influencer. When you go to oxfordroad.com, you can always learn more at the Media Roundtable podcast. We got a lot of interesting content. If you just want to learn about this business, and if you don't care, but you just need somebody to make sure that you're getting outcomes that only we can deliver, go to oxfordroad.com and learn more, and make sure you mention the Media Roundtable, because attribution. That's oxfordroad.com. Yeah, we can't seem to stay still, for better or for worse. Okay, so let's go to that. I mean, like and I don't know how much the AI piece fits into this, but 2-3 years ago, like when you came in, you could put a video. Like, it's not new that a podcast has a video feed.
No.
Adam Carolla was doing that 15 years ago.
Yep.
Leo Laporte had cameras all over. I mean, this is not new. Apple had it before.
Yep.
But somehow it became the topic last year. It became a bigger force, and I think it's really started to reshape everything. And then you get the Netflix thing. So I mean, it's a big topic, and part of it is just to pause and marvel at what it is. But what do you see the kind of the pros and the cons on this thing?
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to, if I'm a creator trying to put myself in their position, and what does this do?
Right.
I think for them, it creates broader distribution, certainly creates more complexity from a management and creation standpoint, but it creates more exposure, it creates more monetization opportunities, it creates more awareness for their shows. I think by and large, it's a very positive thing. I think it's challenging to start thinking about multiple mediums. And if you're not someone who wants to have 20 cameras set up in your living room and don't want to program and have graphics created for, a segment, you're talking about the NFL draft, it starts to get difficult and complex. But look, I look at I always talk about the currency of podcasting in two ways. One is, of course, pure revenue, which is the easy one, but the other one is audience. And I think in this space, we talk a lot about revenue. We don't put nearly enough attention on the audience segmentation of this. And I'm not suggesting that video is going to automatically drive a different or massive set of adoption in ways it hadn't in the past. However, what I would say is if you look at consumption patterns upon younger generations about how they're consuming video content, whether that's showing up in its Instagram feed as a reel or it's showing up on YouTube, and how they're consuming it, I think that's what we're seeing with the changes in video is not so much the medium of video itself, but the demands being put upon it. And then finally, when you get to the Spotify's and the iHearts Spotify and the Apples of the world, the prioritization now is flipped, right? Where video is the lead. Whereas if you consume a podcast on Spotify, the default is to the video setting, not the audio setting, right? And so if you're listening on Spotify, the pull is from the video feed. And, as you said with Apple, video's not new to them. It wasn't talked about very much. And now this whole exposure is created in terms of the importance being placed upon video. So I don't see it as a grand new thing, but I do see it as becoming a much greater sense of emphasis, particularly when you talk about viewing patterns and consumption patterns.
So do you think when you're betting on a future, let's just even say 2-3 years out, right?
Yeah.
Is this more of a video business or an audio business?
Oh, I think it's both. I don't think in a lot of ways, I think consumption patterns, yes, they're tilting towards video. I still know a ton of people that consume in audio, whether it's exercising, it's in the car, it's otherwise. I don't think it's easy to just say it's gonna be one or the other. I think for me, the way I think about 2 to 3 years out is I think about it in terms of consumption and where do you want to be as a creator, and you want to be as many places as you can. I think another example of that is how are people embedding videos in their newsletters, right? How are people consuming that way? Then you start to think about live events as a different consumption pattern, but it's still this concept of reaching an audience wherever they want to be reached. So I'm not answering your question directly because I think it's both. Mm-hmm. And I think that the channels that these creators are going to want to reach their audiences will continue to evolve.
My sense, just to put it on the table, my sense is, you're seeing the platforms create capabilities so that you can toggle, right? So I start by watching, I get in the car, it flips, I pick it up when I get home, whatever, right?
Yep.
And even when they're watching, they're not necessarily watching, right?
Yep.
And I think that's part of the dirty little secret of all this. My view is my perception is that all this hype about video is really a lot less to do with visual and a lot more to do with promotion because of what you're talking about. I think from what I can tell, when you go on YouTube, you can see and have suggested to you a lot of content. The sampling is everywhere. It's like Costco, where everywhere you turn, there's a new sample being offered to you. Right. And then you're like, yeah, I'll take some of that. Yeah, I'll take some of that.
Yep.
And I've had people say in some of these conversations to me, in the old days, you could build your audience on audio, but today that's a hard place to build an audience. You need video for that promotional capability to be able to pepper the world with shorts.
Yep.
That gives a sample, to be able to follow up with the next auto playing thing, and to be able to show yourself, and even advertise it. It's hard to do that. Audio, we never got to the point where an audio platform, you could suggest 10 different things to one listener of a show, right? And I don't know because we couldn't imagine it or what. We just haven't gotten there. And so I think the ability to market your show is there. And when we look at the performance data, what it suggests to us is that obviously it's a huge factor, video, and that's why we're working so hard to unify the way you measure it, right? So it's all kind of one through line, but the quality of the audience is actually better on audio.
Mm.
And I think that is something that is counterintuitive for a lot of marketers and a lot of anybody writing a check. As you go, well, video, it's it's visual, you can do so much more. It's a TV premium versus a radio premium.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, we had Marshall McLuhan's grandson, who runs the McLuhan Institute, on a couple of weeks ago. It was fascinating because we're talking about hot media and cool media, and the way that the way that people engage with the media is different. And when you're receiving it, when you're listening, your brain is working harder, and you're retaining things you would not retain if it was just kind of fed to you through the eyes in the same way. And the engagement is lower because you might have just played the clip and you're dipping in and you're dipping out, so your time spent is shorter. So that's not to say video is bad, audio is good, or anything like that. I'm with you. I think it's a hybrid world. I think you get it where you want it. But I also think that, and I think you were saying this too, is like, don't sleep on audio, because actually that is probably where you're going to build your deepest relationship with your audience. And that's where the value is going to be for engagement and as a brand. I think that's really important. So that's a big part of this. And then, what used to come up is people would say, well, it's not really fair to the kind of long tail of creators, and because you represent so many of them, I'm so curious. Do you think about the disadvantage it puts the startup creator in when they can't really deal with the camera? Or is it like it's all getting so cheap that you're just going to be able to push a button to have video filled in if you want it, that it doesn't even matter? Is that where this is going? Or
I think so. I think the tools and technology are just getting so much easier. And I mean, if you think about I don't want to date you, but let's say our generation and our kids, and growing up with cameras in their hands and technology right away, I just think it's so ingrained in the culture that it just becomes easier and easier. And to your point, the tools become easier and easier to enable this type of behavior. So I don't think I think the cost of entry has come down dramatically for folks who want to be in this space. It's just a matter of what do you want to do, and also, do you want to put on hair and makeup to do your podcast, or are you enjoying doing how you're doing from an audio perspective? But I think that our independent creators in some cases are really embracing it, and others feel like, you know what, this is what this is for me, which is an outlet, a way to communicate with a set of listeners, and audio is completely sufficient for that. And the nice thing is there's a business to be had on both sides of that. And, I think video continues to round out that suite of opportunities for folks. But if folks want to stay limited in audio or focused on audio, there's a business there for them as well.
Do you see any of the stats on how much of the consumption is happening audio versus video? Like, are you seeing the number move year on year at all?
Yeah, I don't have the stats in front of me, but certainly we see that evolving, just like the macro trends are. What I'd be interested in thinking of, and I know you're a big data guy, and if you have access to this, I'd love to see it, is how much of the reels and the shorts and the promotions are translating into actual subscriptions. Because there's no question to me that the awareness is driven dramatically by social feeds, YouTube recommendations, all of those things. The question is, in my mind, is how do we help creators translate those promotional elements into actual consumption? I'll give you an example. Is a platform that I spend a disproportionate amount of time on these days is LinkedIn. And I'm increasingly seeing more and more video from podcast episodes show up there. And I think savvy creators are figuring out how to make the connection from video on LinkedIn to not just follow me, but somehow subscribe to my newsletter or connect in some other form or fashion. And so that's the thing I've been wrestling with lately is, connecting the dots between video awareness, if you will, of that person or that show to actual, loyal listenership, right? Because the monetization piece happens at the loyal listenership, not necessarily in the clips right now.
Right. I have no idea, and I'd love to get that data. I think, but I think just going thinking about the principles behind it, it's sort of like anything else, right? Like we know that the video clips allow you to get on somebody's radar with something,
Yep.
and if you give them an experience that surprises them and delights them or whatever, they may click and they may check you out. But then the difference is, like, if I see a clip of a comedian and I laugh at that clip and I'm like, this person's hilarious, and then I go listen to their podcast, I'm listening for 15 minutes and I haven't laughed, you lost me, right? And so I think there's got to be a through line of, are you actually paying off
Right.
what you sampled? Because it's not like a movie where they can dupe you with a trailer and then you show up and they're only selling it to you once, right?
Right.
You
No,
actually
that's
need
the
to
question.
have a long-term relationship with these people.
Yeah.
So I
And
think continuity matters, right?
it does. And don't get me wrong, like I'm excited about those promotional videos. So when I use the LinkedIn example, there are people that are doing it right. And I think it's about figuring out how to do it right to connect that short-term exposure, if you will, into longer term commitment, even if that's, a few months or what have you, and to create a viable source of revenue for those creators. So
When you think about, you see the Netflix thing, right? And I want to
yep.
get your take on this. I mean, I think there are others that are starting to make these deals. Maybe you're seeing other platforms
Mm-hmm.
starting to write checks. How does it change the unit economics for the business? Is it expanding the pie? Is it robbing Peter to pay Paul? Is it all just a really interesting feature this year that's not really going to be a thing?
Yeah, I think it depends on the platform, and I think there's two ways to look at it. For the platform themselves, what are they seeking to get out of it? Longer listenership, longer engagement. Is someone who watches shows on Netflix going to lean in and watch their podcast there? I think that's the bet they're hoping to make. Obviously, I think longer term it does provide expansion when you think about where people are consuming. I think it's tempting to think about where we are, but as you listen to these, I spend a lot of time listening, thinking about the AI world, as a lot of us do, leading businesses and where it's going, and that's the question that I think we have to be asking ourselves: is not where it's at today and what does Generation X listen to or behave like, but what does Generation Z think about, and how are they consuming those, and where are those opportunities? But when I started in podcasting over 10 years ago, the space was so nascent and so early that it was audio, and it was largely host read, and that was how you monetized. And that's how you grew your audience. It was word of mouth and exposure. This is providing more and more exposure for folks that I think only helps draw awareness. The question is, do the Netflix deals and the others, are they enabling shows that are already either large in scope or have celebrity presences? The Pete Davidson, for example, that was a show that was created exclusively for Netflix. And so what role does that play in a broader podcast universe? That's a whole conversation I guess you could get into. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is no answer. We're all just trying to make sense of it and make guesses about what's going to happen. But one thing I'm curious, you might have primary knowledge on, if you're willing to share it, is, are you seeing it bid up deals? Are you seeing the cost of a deal change? Because just to recap,
Yeah.
People are like, podcasting was this weird thing, and then we're COVID, everybody's in, everybody has a podcast, every celebrity, and then they're writing stupid checks, and then there's this crash.
Yep.
And all of a sudden people are like, okay, let's get real. What do you have? We're not paying you to try something. We're
Yep.
paying you because of proven methodology. And it seemed like the economic opportunity got a lot more to kind of haves and have-nots, right?
Yep.
And what I'm wondering is the potential, the earning opportunity increasing substantively because of these video distribution deals that are starting to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely, when you're considering deals now, it's not just, 5 years ago, what was the download numbers? Now it's, what's the download numbers? What's the YouTube views? What's the social reach? What's the engagement that this person brings to the table? Which, as you know, can vary based on the advertising sector and who who they're trying to reach.
Yeah.
So for us, it's definitely a factor. I wouldn't say it's driving up the market dramatically, but it's entered into conversations in ways it never had in the past.
So you have to negotiate, whereas you were negotiating like show rights before, now you probably are having two negotiations, and you have to decide, am I going to try to stay exclusive on the audio as you're putting a deal together?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I've not seen a lot of deals come through that are segmenting things to the point where you're doing things differently, because you get into these things where you have, I'm blanking on the term here all of a sudden, basically where podcasts are going to YouTube and other places, and you're thinking about what kind of reach am I getting there and combining all of that into one negotiation. So it
Right.
becomes a matter of what's the total reach of a podcast, not just across audio, but across audio and video. Simulcast, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so how we factor those things in, and I put it back to you from the agency perspective, is one more valuable than the others? And that's really where we're taking our cues from in terms of what we can offer to creators, certainly in terms of minimum guarantees, but also in terms of the payouts that we're trying to adjust to and figure out what we're going to offer them in terms of any kind of partnership.
Yeah, well, and that's where like the whole other side of this conversation that we're not even really going to touch today is that standardization problem that I think we're all struggling with, because you have to negotiate what you're going to pay based on the YouTube impression plus the download impression. Is that an impression? Plus the Spotify is that an impression? What the hell's an impression? And assigning a value to that, and we have to buy on behalf of a brand in the same way with the same sloppy metrics, and try to. So let's just say that you and I also, have a secret society where we're trying to solve that issue as well, that we're not going to get into today.
Well, and I think the other thing it's interesting for listeners maybe is it's also a consideration as to what do those dollars look like. And, in this video world, I will say it's getting more complex. What's baked in versus what's dynamically inserted, and what are the end consumption platforms allowing for, right? Because you have YouTube, which is a very clear model that, will accept the baked in, but not allow you to do anything dynamic. Spotify has gone down that path. Apple, it's really interesting, and what they're pursuing is this path of, has been publicly talked about, what is that model and how are they generating revenue from allowing dynamic insertion at the platform level, the hosting level, like ours. Obviously, I really appreciate that model because I think there's a world in which
you're saying the one that Apple just announced?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting take, because I think from an efficiency standpoint and from a scaling perspective, we're allowed to now monetize and dynamically insert advertising in products across another platform. Whereas, if we're not the hosting platform of choice, say for a Spotify or YouTube, those ads have to be baked in, or they don't carry.
Yeah, well, Apple, it's another episode, but like they've been a sleeping giant for a while. Like they built the thing and then they just kind of went and did something else, and now they're like, yeah, I think I'm gonna get back into podcasting in 2026. And it's gonna be profound. And it's, I read some of that monetization stuff, and I'm like, so do you have to like, now you have to set up a credit card situation with them so that you're paying them on the consumption on the DAI, or I wonder how that works.
Yeah, it hasn't become clear yet.
We're not there yet. Okay, well, anyway, I'm glad they're doing it. Okay, let's close on small topic, artificial intelligence.
Okay.
We're in March now, and I don't know. I think February was the month. I think that's when the world changed. And I don't know if you're experiencing it that way, but some of the updates coming through and the capabilities and just the market, the tectonic shifts in the market of what's happening. And how is that impacting your business? How do you think it impacts the industry?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many directions you can.
I know. It's like, how do you even...
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I'm not going to probably touch on the whole creator side of this, because that's an hour podcast in of itself. What I tell you, the way I look at AI, is, in terms of my business and the creators we work with, is how do we leverage an awesome technology to make the lives of our creators and frankly my own business more efficient, more effective, and better what they do. I view it in kind of two camps. One is the 10% camp, and the other is the 10x camp. The 10% camp is the transcriptions, the making your life easier, crafting emails or creating show scripts. That's the 10% side. Then what I think is yet to be determined is what's the 10x version of this? What is the multiplication of? Is it helping create technology that transforms a business like mine? Not overnight, but essentially overnight, because you could now build a Libsyn in a very short period of time. You couldn't build the customer base, you couldn't build the marketing channels, you couldn't build the monetization relationships, but some of the technology components become available in a much quicker fashion. So the way I look at it is, how can me and particularly my team be thinking about leveraging AI to bring tools to market for our customers as fast as possible in a way that allows us to be competitive, not just with the platforms that are out there today, but the one that could get spun up tomorrow because someone has the ability to create something leveraging agents and language models and all the exciting parts we think of AI about.
Well, and what do you think is the most ripe for disruption in the business? Where do you think the biggest that you think that 10x is more on the creation side, the content creation side?
I think it's twofold. I think there's how do creators think about it, and you've got talent and shows being created almost exclusively with AI that's very controversial. And then you see the other end of the spectrum is how do you build and create technology very fast, very efficiently, and put it in the hands of creators almost as soon as you can dream it up.
So it's almost like I've got a show, but I now also have a business around my show and a CRM and my email and all my profiles just kind of happening automatically. And I just get to talk to you, but the machinery around me that might have taken a whole fleet of workers before now is just like one button push. Yeah. And I wonder what happens with and then, where I wonder is like, okay, are we going to have to regulate what is artificial? So you're basically like, I want to be in the artificial YouTube or I want to be in the human YouTube, right? Is that going to be a thing? Or like when we talk about, video, well, I don't have the production capabilities, fine. But like, do you have a movie now running alongside of this conversation, animating all of it? Are you and I cartoon characters doing things that are customized to the frickin' user?
Yes.
Right. And how does that shift all of it? So,
well, and I think the interesting thing too, from the creator standpoint, is how is that view going to evolve, right? Because I think our industry wants to paint it very black and white. And I think the use of AI is a spectrum. And the quick example I use is Ben Affleck today, I don't know if you saw the news, just sold an AI filmmaking technology company to Netflix. He is one of the most ardent voices in favor of the creators, but he's also smart enough to figure out how to leverage technology to help film creators use it in an effective way that doesn't diminish the art, but allows it to come to market faster, more efficiently, and with complements that the technology can bring. And so for us, I think everyone in this space is going to have to find their comfort level. For me, it's about implementing that kind of technology to make the creator's experience that much better and that much faster and more effective, so their lives are easier and they can reach their audiences that much better.
What a great conversation. I know we're about out of time here, but what's next for Libsyn? You got all this technology on your hands. You got a great story. You got great momentum, and it's 2026. So now what do you do?
Yeah, I think for us, it's getting back to basics, which is being an awesome technology company, providing wonderful tools, wonderful monetization, compelling insights and analytics so people can understand their audiences and how best to reach them. I always say to our team, our business isn't easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's doing the simple things right and providing tools for our creators. And when they're happy, that's the bar we're trying to clear. So for me, I think 26 is a focus on continuing to deliver on audio, investing more heavily in video, and then beyond 26, there's a lot to be had out there in terms of helping support the creator. And I'm excited for what that future holds. But we got enough on our plate right now with all this evolution of technology right now.
Well, and I think you and really the whole team at Libsyn have been great partners. I think not just to us, but with us in service of what we're trying to do to make a better,
Yes.
more sustainable business around this, because I think it is a business of dreams, and it's a powerful one, and it's really exciting. And I think we're making some progress. I think we're starting to put a dent in this thing, and you've been a real champion for that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, your company has been fantastic to work with. I know it's grown a lot just in the past year alone, let alone past few. And we're grateful for the partnership. We're grateful for what you do for creators, but also the relationships that you help enable between brands and this talent that is working so hard to bring shows to market. So you guys have been great. I love working with you, and I'm grateful for the time today.
Thank you, Brennan. And boy, thanks for the reiteration of our mission statement, which is to unite brands and creators through strategy and technology for outcomes only we can deliver. So that's what we're trying to do. And if you're saying we're paying it off, that makes me really happy. Thank you for joining the Media Roundtable. And surprise, surprise, this podcast is brought to you by Oxford Road, where we want you to exceed in these channels, not just podcasting, a little bit of audio, creator media, whatever you want to call it, and to use your influence for good. If you're a marketer and you want to align your brand values with extraordinary business outcomes, make sure you reach out to us, oxfordroad.com. Subscribe to The Influencer, where you'll see all the great things that we're partnering with Libsyn to do this month. And if you have feedback, it's info@Media Roundtable. Don't forget to listen to Ad Infinitum. That is Oxford Road's audio creative focused podcast hosted by Stu Redwine. And special thank you to the team that made this happen, which is Haley, Bianca, Rocio, Kyle, Ezra, Everett, Neil, the team at Podcast One. It takes a whole village, doesn't it? As always, influence responsibly.